Now let's go a little bit deeper into the economic figures. We have David Blanchflower. He's a professor at Dartmouth College, former member of the Bank of England Monetary Policy Committee. He is also a Bloomberg television contributing editor. So you watched the President of the Federal Reserve, Ben Bernanke's Chairman. There you go, Chairman. Yeah. And what do you rate his press conference? How do you like this? Federal Reserve chief says celebrities now.
I thought it was a really good thing to do. I think giving more information and clarity to the markets is a good thing. I didn't really expect him to say very much. He didn't. I mean, the role of a central bank governor is to kind of calm nerves, don't create problems. I thought he gave a good call to GDP, and I think he basically said we're going to look through inflation and worry about unemployment. That was the thing that sort of struck me. So economy's slowing, oil price pretty high, but looking through it, not seeing any second-round effects. So I thought it was pretty masterful performance. I mean, the big test will come when they make a change and he has to do a press conference.
Do you believe that he can actually be trusted to hold inflation down when it comes to, comes to shove?
Well, he has a dual mandate. The big problem very often is that recessions are generated because the central bank responds wrongly to an inflationary hike. The question is this inflationary hike transitory as they believe? And I agree with them. I think that it is. And you look through it and you say this inflation is going to drop away. The big problem at the moment for the US economy is actually unemployment, as he stressed, and I think he's right. I think this inflation is going to decline, and you've got to keep the stimulus going. And that's what he said. What
about the purchasing power of the U.S. dollar? That's been declining for longer that Ben Bernanke has been in charge of the Federal Reserve.
Well, he did duck it and say, that's not my job, you should speak to the Treasury. But the truth is that, on the one hand, yes, it feels good for the country to have a strong dollar. But on the other hand, if the dollar depreciates, that gives additional stimulus to the economy. And obviously, that's a sort of response the markets will have to QE. But he ducked it. And obviously, the problem is it's pretty hard to forecast exactly where the exchange rate is going to go. But the economy needs stimulus. It needs growth. And today's figures suggest growth slowing. So that should be his focus.
Danny, I want to pick up on something you mentioned about the Fed's dual mandate, ensuring employment and also keeping a lid on inflation.
Right.
It's true that wages are not picking up, so you can't really have an inflationary environment if wages aren't picking up.
Right.
But commodity prices are. So how long can this dynamic last where you have transitory rises in commodity prices, but inflation wages still pretty stagnant?
Right. I mean, I go back. Of all the recessions that we've seen, I think it's 11 of the last 12 recessions have had an oil price spike or a commodity price spike before them. The second round effects are really what's crucial. It takes a while for monetary policy to act, and the Fed and the Bank of England and others look closely at what's happening to wages, and there is no evidence at all over the last 3 or 4 years that wages are rising. It's what I call the dog that hasn't barked. There is no wage pressure. The Fed and the Bank of England are looking through the temporary shock and assuming that it will go away. If it doesn't, and there are additional increases, then they're going to have to act, and that's what Bernanke said. I'm a big fan of Bernanke.
Danny Blanchflower, tell us about wages right now. You've done a lot of work taking a look at wages and unemployment. Yeah. When are wages in the United States going to finally turn higher?
Well, I think one of the big things that we've seen is that unemployment has risen, and that depresses workers' bargaining power, and so wages have been held pretty flat. I think two things really matter. Unemployment falling and firms doing well, banks lending again, normality returning. So I think that's the big deal, trying to get back to normality. But I think it's going to be a while yet. Unemployment's really high. That depresses wages, and there's no real end in sight, I'm afraid, for the poor old American consumer and worker.
Danny Blanchflower, you're also known as the happiness guru. Tell us, are Americans going to be happy anytime soon, or are we going to have to wait until we retire?
Well, there's certainly some evidence that happiness is U-shaped in age. So someone like me is in the rising part of their happiness function. There is some evidence as well that happiness over a long period in the US hasn't risen. And the other worrying thing is that during this recession, happiness has fallen. So again, it's get back to normality, get the unemployment rate down, get banks lending again. But this is just taking a long time, and I'm afraid I can't give you, just like Bernankes was asked yesterday, don't know when it's going to be all over.
All right, I want to thank you very much, Danny Blanchflower, coming to us from Dartmouth.